Another episode here of Getting There with Goz, where we talk about the career journeys of media members, coaches, athletes, business owners, and more across upstate New York. You saw him in another Gozilla Media podcast just a few months ago, M&M across the board. Now he's hopping over here with Getting There with Goz. Joe Calderone joins us. And Joe, for those not familiar with you, a young Joe Calderone, 5, 6, 7 years old. What do you want to be as a kid? And was that same dream job you wanted when you were 18 years old? Where'd you grow up?
5 or 6, guys. I don't.
How about 7 or 8? Then I'll bump up the age for you.
Hey, 5 or 6 days ago, I don't remember. All kidding aside, so I come from, anybody who knows me knows that, outside, it's almost like TV, radio, media is secondary. I tell this story. I swear to God, I'm going to get back on track here. But I tell this great story that knocked me down a peg or two when I was on TV. And I remember I was out in Saratoga. This is like mid-2000s, right? And I'm on the air every day. So kind of, even if you're modest, it's tough every once in a while, especially if you're a young guy. You're feeling yourself every once in a while. And I'm at, I'll give him a shout. I'm at City Tavern, right? It's summertime. Saratoga is what it is. And a bunch of people come up to me like, yo, bro, I know you. And I'm thinking, yeah, you do. And they're like, you're Pizza Pete's kid. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. Thank God there's 5 floors in the summertime if you count the roof, because I couldn't get off the second floor fast enough. So based on that story, my whole thing started, I grew up in the family restaurant business. In fact, my 2 middle brothers still own it, Pizza Supreme in Broad Albin, the 12025. My mom and dad started that in 1977, and it's still up and running. It's thriving, right? So from the ages of like 8, literally, I was making pizza boxes at like 8 till about 18. I was making pizza, and I thought that, after high school, when I'm done with that, maybe I'll go to community college or something. I know you're gonna be stunned by this. Wasn't much into the readings and the writings and the arithmetic. I know. So I thought, I'll when I'm done with high school, I'll go to a community college or maybe a 4-year, go for business administration, take over the family business, maybe franchise or something, right? So I graduated from Broad Albin Perth in 94. And while I was, kind of deciding what I wanted to do, because when I graduated, I didn't go to college right away. I took the fall of 94 off because I was, it's my Dawson's Creek moment. I needed to reflect and decide what I was going to do with my life.
It's the gap year, right? They call it the gap year across the pond.
Yeah, take a walk on the beach, skip rocks, I don't want to wait, all that stuff. So while I was doing that, I was still working at the pizza place in Broad Albin, but my school, they knew there wasn't a microphone I didn't like. And so they asked me to be a public address announcer for football games. So, and this is where my whole TV radio career, where it jumped off from. So I'm doing the PA at a Broad Albin Perth Fonda Fultonville game, big rivalry in the 90s. And a local radio station was doing the game, WCSS in Amsterdam, right? 1490 AM. And I remember this vividly because it's just hilarious now because you can't even imagine this happening. But so I'm doing the public address announcing, and there's no press box. So it's an open, press box. There's no roof. There's nothing. It's just open. And this guy, Phil Spencer, he's still around. He's kicking. And so literally 80s, 70s TV, you ever see the movies where they're in the newsroom typing with a cigarette hanging out of their mouth? This guy's he hasn't lit it. He's got a cigarette in his mouth. It's halftime. He's going to run out to the parking lot and puff one down. And before he leaves, he's like, what's your name? I said, it's Joe Calderone. He goes, got a good set of pipes, man. You ever think about radio? And now, listen, growing up, I was a huge ESPN SportsCenter guy, right? Back in the day where the same SportsCenter played on loop overnight, Tirico and Oberman and Patrick and all those guys, right? So I would watch the repeats they were going to change, but I'd watch the 10 same SportsCenters overnight. So I was big into sports watching, and I said, no, I never really thought about radio or anything like that. And he goes, well, you should think about it. And I said, well, all right. And he goes, well, here's my card. And why don't you give me a call sometime? And if I'm at the studio we'll give you a tour, and we'd like to see maybe maybe if things work out, you can intern for us. I was like, okay, I didn't really think anything of it. So I don't call him for a while. And then after the fall of 94, spring of 95, I decided, I'm going to go to college. I enrolled at Fulton Montgomery Community College. And so I go there for, of course, business. Now, mind you, I haven't reached out to this guy, Phil Spencer or WCSS. Somehow, some way, he reaches out to me. And I don't honestly remember how it happened, but he's like, what, are you too good to give us a call or what? I said, no, life happens, and now I'm enrolled at FM. And he's like, well, that doesn't mean you can't come and check out the radio station. Why don't you come and check it out? So I do go there, start listening to some of the local shows, right? There was a show called, oh God, what the heck was it called? The Swap Shop, dude. Hilarious. But yet, Hour Live.
I've never heard about this. Is it Capital Region Sports Show?
No, it was in Amsterdam. This is
Okay.
And by the way, people, if they're from Amsterdam and they watch this, they're gonna know WCSS is actually a legendary small AM in upstate. Like a lot of people in the 90s that got on TV in the Albany market for news started doing news at WCSS. So it was like one of those like legendary small stations where people got to cut their teeth, and then they did whatever they did. So I go there, and there was this show called oh my God, what the heck was it called? The Swap Shop. I swear to God, you would think it was an SNL skit. It was the #1 rated show at the station. They would call and be like, yeah, this is Mikey in Amsterdam. I got myself a couple of tires, a dryer that doesn't work. If you want it, call me. 843-1234. And people would call, and I was like, what is this? It's hilarious. I'm listening to this, just dying laughing, and they go, okay, let's go take a look at, whatever, a tour. And by the time we were done, they were like, well, what do you think? You want to come? We like you, and we'd like to see, we could use an intern, and we'd like to see if you would be interested in interning. So I was like, well, let me think about it, whatever. So I leave, and didn't take long. Like next day, I'm thinking this would be fun. So I said, sure. And dude, this is mid-90s, not paid, and they smacked you around. And I don't mean literally, but I mean figuratively. I was going to FM. I was working at my parents' pizza place, and then on Saturdays, I was doing overnight reel-to-reel changes. So like old school, it was an automated system that if you saw it, it's probably in the Smithsonian now. But this thing, I would have to go in there at midnight on a Saturday, right? I'm in like 19, 20 years old. Like all my boys are out having a good time, living life, partying it up, and I'm finishing up working at the pizza place and then going to CSS to do these overnight reel changes where you have to lock it in, run the tape through the thing and around the end, and then you click it, and there was like this computer, you'd hit enter and it would lock it in, and it would be this overnight automated, like the sounds of Sinatra and all this other crap. So I'm doing this for a while. And this is really where the story I'm about to tell you, this is where like I got bit by the bug, and you've heard that phrase before. This is where I fell in love with it, because I'd never felt a rush like this until this moment. So what happens is one of these, like it's cold winter. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm doing my overnight reel changes, but I would have to do them at midnight, 3 and 5 in the morning. So
hang on. Hey, I just stop you right there real quick before. What is your hours? You're there all night then. That's like if your pizza place, and that's when are you sleeping?
Well, here's what I would do. So I would go there at midnight. I'd bring a sleeping bag and an alarm clock, and I would lay it down. They had a TV in there, so you could go into like the sales office or the newsroom where we would rip faxes and stuff and go read the news or whatever. So I would take my sleeping bag, sprawl it out, do the first reel change, lay on the ground, take a nap, set my alarm for like 2:50 because you have to, like, 12, 3, 5. So I did that for a while. And then one Sunday, I'm doing the 5 o'clock reel change, and I never gotten a phone call in the studio. All of a sudden, I see it lighting up, and I'm like, what is this? So I pick it up, and Phil Spencer says to me, hey, I need a favor from you. Now, mind you, at this point, and I didn't mention this before, they liked my sound. So they, as an intern, unpaid, they used me to voice radio spots for them that played. Like local, like these are institutions in Amsterdam, right? Rain Dancer, Church Street Deli, Siebert Sporting Goods. So I'd be like, yeah, you're looking for Nikes? And they liked it, and it was free. So they'd be like, let him do that, and he'll feel all special that he can hear himself on an AM station in Amsterdam. They used me to the and when I say used, it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. But anyways, so this moment, this one time where I'm doing the 5 o'clock reel change, they called me and they said, listen, the guy who normally comes in to do the Sunday morning news read and to do the board for the Joe, I'm not even joking, to do the board for the live Joe Mason polka show, which was local. Swear to God, dude. So they go, he's not going to be able to make it. He doesn't feel good. So we need you to do the news live. And I'm like, oh, because at that moment I knew how to do the board a little bit, enough to go, this potted up. Okay, it wasn't very complicated. You know, they had the ABC like news, and they'd be like, this is ABC News. And then you bring the pot up for the live show, right? So I'm like, oh, I don't feel, they're like, listen, chill out, relax. They're like, here's what you do. Go grab the recorder. I shouldn't even be telling this, but because again, I'm and mind you, it's 94, 95.
Never been on the air before, never been out of college. Here you are behind the board, news, drive time in the morning.
And I've watched guys do shows there and do news reads and cadence and how to kind of do it and deliver it. But I'd never done it on my own. So they say, so here's what you're going to do. Okay. Full disclosure, it was plagiarism. So, I mean, I kind of worked it, you know, right. Certain things. But they're like, just go in, find the story, kind of rework it, you know, don't timestamp it, just kind of whatever, you know, read the sports scores, right, from the night before, do weather, and then do the obits. And then once you're done, just go, and now, Joe Mason, polka show, right? So, dude, I do this. And still to this day, I mean, I was so amped up and excited and scared. I remember bits and pieces, but I just went into that like autopilot because I was so amped up. So the next day, they call me up and they go, hey, we got to talk to you. You want to come in? I know you're interning, but we want to talk to you about something. And I said, sure. Now, mind you, they knew I was a big sports person. I love doing, you know, sports, whatever. Wanted to, you know. So they bring me in the next day. Phil Spencer sits me down, and then I forgot who the GM was at the time. But they sit down and they start smiling and laughing. And I said, what's going on? They're like, dude, I'll tell you. It was not bad. It was good. Did a good job. Could tell you were a little bit, a little fired up. We had to, you know, bring that down a little bit. And you know, whether it's radio or TV, that first time you're so excited, you're talking so fast. You got to slow it down.
Speed's going quick. You think there's an imaginary clock in your head, all that stuff.
You got to slow it down and all that stuff. So, and then they start laughing hysterically. And they said, and here's some advice, though. There's a reason why we put a break in between the news, weather, sports thing, and then we say, hey, when we come back, obits. Right, you got it. They go, dude, you were so amped up reading the obits. It was like a sports cast. We couldn't stop dying laughing. You're like, and she's, you know, her, you know, next of kin, and, you know, she's lived, you know, outlived by her grandchildren and her grandson and her son. And, oh, yeah, she lived a good life, you know. And I was like, excited. I didn't know what to do. And they're like, yeah. So when it comes to the obits next time, just bring it down a little bit. But it was great. And then, I mean, honestly, after that, I remember, mind you, I was at the station all night, exhausted normally when I go home. I was so amped up. Like, I was in my car and I'm like, oh my God, like, that was like terrifying. And at the same time, like, you can't simulate that kind of excitement, that rush of like that kind of, you know, live radio, TV. You cannot simulate. So I remember after that going to FMCC, and there was a counselor there. His name was Bill Pierce. He was a professor, but he was like a guidance counselor for me because I was also a part of student government at the time at FMCC, and he was our guy, right? At that moment, I just realized I'm like, I'm going for business, but I want to do this, right? Radio, TV came a little bit later, but radio was my first love. Like I say it all the time. If it wasn't for the pay, I would have stayed doing radio for the rest of my life. Like, it's just, you can't, there's no more, it's so conversation. You did it for a long time. It's conversational. It's where you can really be you in a lot of ways. When you're doing TV, you got to reference to the camera. You're responsible for, you got to hit those marks when you're reading scripts, because there's roll cues, and the directors are depending on, like, oh, did he say that? Did you roll the video? Not the sound thing. It's just, it's almost stage acting. You know what I mean? You got to hit your marks, and
yeah.
It's blocking, and make sure you're doing all, like radio, you just grab the mic and you just go. And I always loved that. And so if it wasn't for the pay, I would have totally just stayed there. But as you know, and I know, it's not the case. So, I when I was interning at WCSS, that then became, besides the recording the local ads and every once in a while filling in to do news, they needed somebody to do play-by-play for football. So the year that Amsterdam won the 1995 state title, I did play-by-play for about 3 or 4 games, and then management they're like, you have really major potential. Hey, a little rusty. We're going to pair you up with a guy who ends up being, and I don't know if you know this name, his name's John Thomas. He was the voice of the Albany Colony Yankees. So the GM of the station at WCSS actually knew John, was friends with John, and as a favor to the GM, he's like, I'll help you out. So John came in, I slid over, obviously, for good reason, and then I became the color guy for that team that year. And then, like I said, it was, they went all the way and won the state title. And I'm pretty sure at that time, they were the first Section 2 team to win the state championship.
Whoa. All right.
I'm pretty sure. Because I know there was I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, it's sports. Chris Honorado, sports trivia.
There you go, man. So now you're calling Amsterdam. You're getting these on-air opportunities after that amazing break you get early on. So what happens next? I feel like, I don't even know if you know Mark Kestisher. Like, this is very Mark Kestisher-like here, where you weren't sure what you wanted to do, community college, all this, and now the on-air breaks are happening in your hometown.
Well, side note, Mark Kestisher, when I was working at WCSS, internship, there were some nights where I would run the board, and WCSS simulcasted Albany Firebirds games. So I was listening to Mark Kestisher and my man, Big Game James Allen, doing those games. So and then when I was doing radio at Town Square and all that stuff way back in 2013, you could call Mark Kestisher and be like, dude, I'd love to have you on, talk about whatever you want. And despite the fact that he was huge at this point, I mean, he's like the voice of ESPN radio. That's what makes him so great. Guys like him, Andrew Catalon, Doug Sherman, they're great at what they do. This is going to sound so cliche, but it's true. Like, they're great at what they do, but they're better people, which is, and tease, this is going to be some advice I'm going to give to some people who might want to travel down this road. Okay. So we'll come back to that later, but Mark Kestisher was great. So that's, again, side note. So what happened was, I end up doing these games with John Thomas, and during one of our trips out to actually, like, we were out going to, I remember it like it was yesterday, a Cobleskill Fonda Fultonville football game at Cobleskill, right? And we're talking. He's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, but I really like this a lot. And he goes, well, would you ever think of TV? I was like, not really. Why? And he goes, well, there's a guy that I'm really good friends with at CBS 6, and I could totally hook you up with an internship. No problems, right? So this guy was named Rick Renner. And I don't know if you've heard of Rick Renner.
Another legendary Capital Region talent we're talking about here. Yeah.
Insane, this man. And I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. Like, so mind you, at this time, so I get this internship, it's Rick Renner and a very bay-faced 29-year-old Doug Sherman, right? So I get this internship, and I actually technically got it illegally. Because what happened was, John Thomas was like, my boy is Rick Renner. I'll hook you up with the internship. And you were supposed to get credits. And I never did. And you were only supposed to do an internship for a semester. I was there interning for 9 months.
Woo!
9 months. And there was this lady, she was awesome. And I wish I could remember her name because she was awesome. She, after about 2 months, was like, something's up with this guy. So she literally, like, I walked by her desk to go into the sports office, and she literally, like, do-si-dos me. She grabs my arm, spins me around. She's like, follow me, and corners me in this, like, one of these editing bays. She goes, you're not getting credits for this. I said, don't blow this for me, please. I really want to learn. Like, I'm on my own dollar. I buy my own meals. Like, I want to do this. Just don't, please. And she goes, listen, I have to cover my butt. So here's what's going to happen. We're gonna rehearse this. She goes, every time you come in, I'm gonna be as loud as a bell, and I'm gonna go, Mr. Calderone, you working on them credits from FMCC? And I was like, oh yeah. And she goes, okay. She goes, because I'm not getting in trouble for you. And I said, great. So, dude, for 8 months, 9 months, I'm interning. I learned so much from Rick as far as go for it, right? Like, don't, like, you want to have fun? Go for it. But don't half-ass it. Don't, because there's some times where people want to do the Sports Center shtick, and then they realize, oh, I don't know if I can pull this off, and it's going to come off sounding really cringy and very corny. And he's like, if you're going to do something silly, you got to go all the way. Do it. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Do it. And then what I learned from Doug was the professionalism and the attention to detail. Because, and my girlfriend's down the hall, she's probably laughing, going, attention to detail, you? But when it came to the sports broadcasting part of it, yes. My life, that's a whole other story. But, you know, they were the perfect combination of, you know, again, go for it. If you got a personality, show it. And make sure you got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. So that internship there, coupled with the WCSS internship, invaluable, and it made me fall in love with this field. So what happened was, when I was at FM, like I told you, that guy Bill Pierce, about midway through my 3rd semester, he comes to me and he goes, "I hear you on the radio. It's great. When are you going to change your major? This business crap. You need journalism, broadcasting, whatever." Because I had told him I was looking at schools to transfer to. Syracuse was one of them, but they didn't take transferring juniors in the spring at SAC. I sound better still. So I ended up looking at schools in Plattsburgh State University. Yep, the Berg. And so he goes, "You got to change your major." So I did. And what happened was, I ended up getting my associates in business. But when I transferred to Plattsburgh, they took about 90% of those classes that were geared towards business, and they used them as, they were like, this will count for this gen ed and this gen ed or whatever. So I go to Plattsburgh, 2.5 of the greatest years of my life. I loved every second of it. Plattsburgh was amazing. When I was done, when I graduated there, I spent another 2 years there because I started working at WPTZ, the NBC station up there. And that, when I first started there, it was behind the scenes. I was running audio boards for the 6 and the 11. Then I became a floor manager, all these things. But I always had the on-air aspiration. You know, I always wanted to be on air. So from there was a guy by the name of Chris Kelly, who's still my boy. He's actually at ESPN now. He's got more Emmys. He's a photog. More Emmys than we got light bulbs in the kitchen. Like, he's just brilliant. Like, you see his stuff and you're like, you know. So he was the sports director at PTZ at the time. And like most college towns, if you have a broadcast curriculum, you can watch the college station on your local cable provider, right? So he knew about me because I basically volunteered to host every show in Plattsburgh. Cardinal Sports, Sports Rap Live, Stay Tuned, which was a comedy sketch show. This was called North Country Nightly, which was like a late night talk show format. You interview the mayor of Plattsburgh 50 times because nobody else will come on. Like, just, you know, the typical crap. So this guy, Chris Kelly, is like, hey, he goes, "I know you want to do the on-air stuff." He goes, "You got a demo?" And I said, "No, not even close." He goes, "Here's what you're going to do. I need help on Friday nights with football. So here's the deal. You come in on a Friday off the clock," which, again, it's the 90s. You can still do it. and you're gonna help me shoot football. You're gonna go shoot highlights because like in Vermont and in Plattsburgh, like the schools, it's not like there's 110 schools like in Section 2. The schools up there are spread out. Like one night, Plattsburgh might be playing Governor or Ogdensburg or whatever, right? So you might here you could get 3 games. There you'll get 1, and you'll be lucky to get it back in time for the 11. That's how far it is. So I helped him get those highlights, and then after that, he would help me on a Sunday with doing a demo. He would say, "Hey, I'll do my 6:00. Let me go take a dinner break, and when I come back, I'll give you my script. You word it how you want, and I'll do the prompter for you, and we'll start building a demo for you." So we did that, and then about 6 months later, a job opened up at our sister station, WPTZ's sister station in White River Junction, Vermont. Okay, the station was WNNE, which later on I would learn meant to most stations in that market need new equipment. So those are the call letters. And so they were looking for somebody that could be a rover, produce news, fill in sports. So I'm like, I want to get on air reps. So I applied for this job, go down there, interview, boom, get it. I go down there, first time on air, same deal, like as like the AM radio station for the first time. I'm so amped up and excited to just get on the desk and do this for the first time for real, despite the fact that probably 5 people saw it in this market. But I was just ready to go. I was just like ready to go. And then I remember like about 5 minutes before I was ready to go, the floor manager, opens up the door. They're like, "Okay, we're into the break before weather, so get ready." Dude, I thought I was having a panic attack. I was like, "Oh my God, I don't want to do this." I was like this close to like literally busting out the back door of the station, jumping in my car and going back to Broad Albany. I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Finally, just calm my nerves, went in. Again, don't remember much, but according to my news director at the time, they're like, a little fast, a little fired up, but you got it. So from there, I did that for about a year. And I don't want to say got homesick, but wanted to get to Albany because I wanted to do this, but in front of family at a place that people would hear me and see me. And so I made phone calls. I literally, I left. I quit WNNE, went back to Albany, and was just bouncing around everywhere. I went back to CSS for a little while. Then I started doing traffic on the radio for a company called Metro Network.
Hang on. I got to stop you right there because this is wild what you just said. I think some people, especially younger listeners, might be blown away by what just happened there. So you've got a job. Like you're on the air, you're in Vermont, you've got a connection for that job, and after only 1 year said, enough is enough. I'm not doing this. It is just about being homesick, or was it the expectations that you had were so high where it wasn't living up to? It was just that, like, was it the hours? Because hearing that you're gone after a year and hearing the passion in your voice blows my mind hearing that fast.
The hours were never an issue for me. I think if anything, growing up in the restaurant business, that got me geared, that got me prepared for the television and radio industry. Because, I mean, we were open 7 days a week at Pizza Supreme when I was a kid. And you would get there at 10 o'clock in the morning. You'd leave at 11, 12 o'clock at night. I was a kid. I'd work like 12-hour days. So hours didn't mean anything to me. But I think I was getting homesick. I loved that station, and I loved it for the experience that it provided for me. But it was just kind of like a weird vibe. And, I loved the people I worked with. Loved them. We had a great time. You're young. You're in your mid to early 20s. There's that sense of camaraderie and family like that you just can't duplicate or simulate at big. Like you see these people at these big networks, they're not family. They don't, whatever. Here, you're together. You're all in the same stage of your career, right? You're trying to make a name for yourself. You're trying to do great things. Now you're in this small town. You go to the same small bar. Like I remember the bar, the 7 Barrel in Lebanon, New Hampshire, because where White River Junction was right on the border of New Hampshire. Like you could walk from our station to New Hampshire. One of the things when I was doing sports, I covered Dartmouth a lot because it was right over. Just 10 minutes away from the station. So so it was just I just wasn't feeling it, and I never quit on anything, even to my detriment. But at this moment, I was like, I just want to go. I want to go home, and like you said, that was a big risk. You got a job. What are you doing? But I went home and I, used some of the connections, as many connections as you can make, as from somebody who's making 18.5 a year. So I used some of those connections, made some phone calls. Doug Sherman was great. He was one of the first people that I went to see when I came back in 2000. In 2000, went to go visit him. Showed him my demo from NNE. He had he had some great advice, but he really liked it. He's like, this is totally Joe Calderone. He's like, nothing's changed. I love it. And so he would, he'd keep his eye open for me. If there were any feelers out there, he'd kind of steer me in the right direction. And so again, went back to working for CSS, was doing traffic for a company called Metro Networks, which I don't know if it's changed since, but Metro Networks was essentially the place where all of the stations in the Albany market, they would almost like freelance traffic from Metro Networks. So they provided traffic to all the stations. So there were people like myself, Michelle Adams, a guy by the name of Vince Gallagher, who's a riot. We basically would drive the Metro Networks at 4:30 in the morning, and you would get your sheet. They'd be like, all right, Calderone, here's who you got today. You're going to be doing traffic for Fly 92, the River, the Froggy 107.1 in Glens Falls, WGNA, and you would do the traffic as if you were in studio with the morning show hosts. But you weren't. It was just, again, you were just, for lack of a better way to describe it, they would rent out traffic reporters.
Outsourcing it, basically. Yeah.
Yes, outsourcing. Thank you. Limited vocabulary today. But you would do the same thing. They would set it up like, hey, it's WGNA, your home for country. Let's go to Joe Calderone. Hey, what's going on, partner? And you'd be like, hey, guys, here's your traffic. It's brought to you by Metamucil. Things are going smooth with the 24 tolls and 787. It's a straight shoot to your work. Hey, move over to the left. You got a tire changer over there, and blah blah blah.
I feel like that actually might have been a cast at one point. You just remembered it off the top of your head.
It was literally, unless there was an accident, it was the same freaking thing for 4 hours. So I was doing that. I was working at my family's pizza place again. Then I ended up getting a job full time at Vox Radio in Glens Falls at Froggy 107.1. It was a country station up in Glens Falls. So I ended up getting a full-time gig as their afternoon drive guy. And my on-air name, and this was such a fun time. Again, the pay was squadoosh, but it was just one of those moments when you look back, it was just so much fun. So I remember wanting to get something more solid because, again, as I just mentioned, pizza place, the AM station in Amsterdam, doing traffic part-time, whatever I could do. So Froggy 107.1, because I did some traffic for them, they liked my sound. They were looking for a full-time person, couldn't find anybody. And they said,
not a sports station, by the way, for those outside of the capital region. That's not a sports station at this time.
No, right. Nope. This is country, which, by the way, so, but I learned a lot in that year about country. So I go up there, I interview for this job, and they go, we love you. Jackie Donovan. I don't know if you've heard of that name.
No.
Amazing, right? So she's still around. She's from here. Jackie Donovan and Justin Clapp, I'm sorry. Justin Clapp was the program director, and Jackie was kind of like, she was the program director for the Hot AC across the hall. So they both interviewed me because they were like, well, you'll be live on Froggy, but we want you to animate, it was animate, right? So animated show. So they're like, we'd like for you to be the voice 7 to midnight on this Hot AC, Wink 105.7. So I'm interviewing for both of these, got paid for one. But they said for Froggy, they're like, listen, would you be cool if we called you, if your on-air name was Joey Buttafrago?
No, that's not true. No.
It's true. Because it was Froggy 107, right? So everyone had to have some sort of like Froggy, like his name was James Pond Lily Pad was his morning show
Oh
co-host,
God.
and I'm Joey Buttafuoco. Now, mind you, it wasn't too long after the whole Joey Buttafuoco stuff happened, right? So I would
I'm
go,
choking on the cheesiness of this right now. My God, Joe. Oh, oh.
dude, you would be. Here's the funny part though. So they go, Joey Buttafuoco, are you cool with that? I'm like, if you pay me, I don't care. What do you want to call me? Let's do this. Dude, you wouldn't believe up in them parts how popular it was. People loved it. I would go make appearances. We would just, you want to talk about cheese? I had this foam 10-gallon hat, like just went
Oh
stupid
no.
crazy, dude. I'm showing up at stuff, and they're like, Ferraghi 107.7. And you know how it is. You bring the beds down, and we're like, hey, it's Joe Buttafuoco. How you doing? Just going overboard. We're at Niemer and Queensberry, geared up. Let's just stupid nonsense. Because I'm like doing if I'm gonna do the country thing, I'm gonna again, Rick Renner, just go for it. Just do it. Have a blast. And if you get punched in the eye, whatever, right? So I'm doing this, having a blast, learning a lot more about country than I ever thought I would. I'm doing the hot AC stuff again. It's all recorded, anime, whatever. And then that parlayed into a program director from a radio station in Burlington. It was called Alice 1033 and 93.7. It was a hot AC, but very geared towards, they always would tell me, our P1 listener is a young woman, professional, mid to late 20s, who makes 55. You know how they just break down every demographic, right?
Oh yeah.
This is exactly who it is, right? So they're like, we have a morning show, and it was called Teresa and something, but the guy who's there is actually leaving for a big market, and we need somebody to fill in. We'd like for you to come up and interview. And I said, okay. So I get done one night. It's the middle of the winter, right? It's December. I finished my night show, right? I finished recording my show for Wink, the hot AC in Glens Falls. And I jump in a car and I drive to Burlington at night, stay at this hotel. And this was their interview. They go, drive up to Burlington at night. We booked you at this hotel. And then come over to the station. We want you to do the morning show. Cool. Never met this lady.
They have no idea who it is, no contact. This is pre-texting, yeah.
I had talked to her on the phone for about 15, 20 minutes. I talked to the program director of the station and the GM of the station. They go, this is how we're gonna do it, to see if there's any chemistry whatsoever. And I'm like, wow, that's gutsy, ballsy. Okay, let's do it. So she's leading the way, and we nailed it. It was great. We had a good time. Because again, at that moment, I'm like, I really don't. I mean, maybe I was tired. I just didn't care. You know how it is, dude. When you don't really care, sometimes it's there's no stress, there's no pressure.
It is, though, remarkable that there are people who work for 3 to 6 months in a radio format and don't find chemistry. It could usually take months. It could never happen. And it felt like after a couple-hour window, at least it worked. At least at that moment, something happened, something clicked.
Well, and here's the funny part, though. It only lasted 6 months, because then down the road, didn't click so much.
Right, yeah, see, my radio instincts or my audio instincts are still there somewhere. That's right.
Yeah. And full disclosure, listen, anybody who's ever worked with me, this is going to sound arrogant and then very self-deprecating. Anybody I've ever worked with, I love people. I'll go out of my way to do pretty much anything for anybody. But then there's the difficult Joe Calderone side, which is, if I think I'm right, I'm right. And I don't care what facts you got or what you tell me. I think I'm right. I'm right. And so that's the difficult side. And we were both very what made that audition great was that we came in with supreme confidence, and we were just busting chops right from the rip. What made it difficult in the end was very hard-headed, right? In Italian, we call it cabadost, right? Hard-headed, right? So we were very much about. Now, she ended up being the program director. So we were co-hosts. It was Joe and Teresa in the morning on Alice 1033 and 93.7, but she was the program director. So I kind of would, it would just became one of those things where we would argue about things, and it was always she had the tiebreaker because she was the PD. So after 6 months, and butting heads. I'm out the door. I come back to Albany again. So what happened was, before I actually took that gig, and while I was doing all the other radio stuff, a TV station in Albany was about to be created, right, from scratch, right? And it was a unheard of format. 24-hour news, 7 days a week. At the time, it was called Capital News 9, which is now, fast forward 20 years, Spectrum News. And so while I was doing all this radio stuff, I had my demo from NNE. I got that advice from Sherm, all this stuff. And the guy who was the head honcho at this groundbreaking initiative, this new station, Capital News 9, the GM and the guy who was leading the way to create this station was a guy by the name of Al Marlin. And we probably text each other and talk maybe once every 2 weeks now. Still, he's here. He is actually now the director of communications for the New York State Teachers Union, the NYSUT, whatever it's called. So this guy, Al, I met him for the first time when I was interning for Rick and Sherm. He was the ops manager at CBS 6. So it's all interconnected, right? So they're building this station. The news comes out that this thing's going to be a go and that they're going to launch in October of 2001. Well, things happen, doesn't happen then. It ends up being they launch in October of 2002. So while I'm doing the radio stuff and bouncing around, I sent my demo because somebody told me, hey, you're never going to believe who's the big boss of this thing, Al Marlin. So I was like, oh my God, Big Al, fish, right? I sent him my tape. He calls me, says, hey, at this time, we already have our sports team. But every once in a while, check in. You know, don't be a stranger. You know, if you call me, you can come toward the station and we'll shoot the breeze and catch up and all that stuff. So I'm like, all right, I'm thinking, it's probably not going to happen. They got their sports team. It's a new station. Those people in the sports department are probably going to be there 3, 4, 5 years. Who knows? So after that, I'm still doing the radio stuff. I go to Burlington. That doesn't work out. I come back to Albany. Guess where I go back to? CSS, Pizza Play.
That's right.
Rinse, wash, repeat, right? Just to keep afloat, got to make money. And so I come back in 2003, and a Amsterdam Bureau report. Now, mind you, Capital News 9 is already now at this point a year in existence. So they launched in October of 2002. I came back the summer of 2003. So in the fall of 2003, an Amsterdam Bureau reporter job opens up. Now, I don't want to do news. I produced news for that 1 year at NNE while I was filling and doing sports, and I'm not a news guy, right? So I don't want to do it, but I'm like thinking, okay, everyone in Amsterdam knows you now from your days doing radio. I brokered great relationships with Amsterdam police, Montgomery County sheriffs, Fulton County sheriffs, because when we would do the news, I would call them for sound bites, quotes, hey, talk to me about this. There was an armed robbery. Can you give me a quote? Sure. Call me at this time and we'll record it and blah, blah, blah. So I interview for this job, and it ends up being where it's down to me and another guy. And I remember a lady by the name of Mary Rozak. She is now the communications contact for Dan McCoy, Albany County exec, right? So Mary Rozak says to me, I meet her for the first time. I interview. She goes, hey, I got a test for you while you're here interviewing. Here are 5 AP wire scripts. Rework them into 20-second VOs. They just writing tests, all that stuff. Nail that. Interview again. She tells me it's down to 2 people. I'm like, oh, that's exciting. And get off the phone with her. Now I get hit with this overwhelming guilt. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. So I call her. I said, Mary, it's Joe Calderone. Hey, what's up? I'm taking my name out. What? I said, yeah, I'm taking my name out of the running. And she's like, really? And I said, well, during our interview, and I didn't say this in the story, but while we were interviewing, one of the things she did say to me was, I see that every tape you've sent us is sports. Just so you know, this is a job for our Amsterdam Bureau reporter. So let's say a job opens up in sports. doesn't automatically mean we're just going to grab you and throw you into sports. You're interviewing for the news job. You understand this, right? I said, yep. I totally lied at that point. So with that, I wanted to respect them and not mess around with them and whatever. So I called Mary Rozak back and I said, listen, I'm pulling my name out. Here's why. My heart is with sports. It's what I love. It's what I want to do. And I didn't want to disrespect you guys by lying to you. And not that, I don't want to sound too cocky. I might have got beaten out by this person. Might have. But the fact that she called me and I could tell in the tone, I was like, oh, I might really have a shot at this. And I don't want to, if anything in my career, the one thing I don't want is to mess with my name, my reputation, right? I don't want to do that. So I said, so that's the reason why I'm pulling out of this. And she said to me, she goes, I'm actually very glad you did that because full disclosure, the fact that you were down to the 2, let's just say people here really liked you for that. And the fact that the other person that's interviewing is not from here, you are from here. You know the people. You know what people like, what they want. You know what matters in those communities because you live there. Like it's Amsterdam. At this time, I'm living in Broad Alban. It's 5 minutes down the road. So she's like, the fact that you are a person there already with a name, you might be able to like get things out of certain people that maybe a rando from out of town wouldn't. So you were very high on the list for that position. So we appreciate the fact that you pulled yourself out if your heart wasn't in it. Because to be honest with you, if you took if we offered it to you and you took it, and then 5 months later, all of a sudden you're telling us, oh, it wasn't for me, and then you pulled up, we would have been really pissed. So thank you for the honesty. And I said, well, listen, just so you know, loved every minute of our, interaction and love what you guys are doing. And at that time, it was a super young shop. Everybody was 23, right? So I'm like, love what you guys are doing. Love the format. I think it's awesome. And, I see that you guys do traffic on the air. If you need somebody to fill in to do traffic on camera, every 20 minutes or whatever, I would love to do that if you need it. Oh, no, we'll consider that. We'll consider that. Thank you. And that was it. I get off the phone. I'm like, you're an idiot. You're a moron. You just blew it. Like that was your chance. Done. You're not going to get on air in the Albany market. Finito. So about a month later, the news director, not Mary Rozak, who was the assistant, or the GM, Al Marlin, the news director, a guy by the name of Chris Bruner, who's awesome. Like this guy's like mad scientist. He's crazy, but in the greatest way ever. Like superhuman being, right? He calls me up. And I hope if he sees this, he doesn't get offended. But so he would be like, Calderone, what's going on? Chris Bruner here. How you been? It's like, good. What's up, man? Listen, as I'm sure you're aware, we've got an opening in sports. And I said, well, I was aware. And he goes, a young lady by the name of Courtney George, who she was really good. She, after a year, left to go to CNN to do sports there, where it was like CNN SI or something or whatever. But she was doing like those updates. Like it's not like she had her own show, but she was still, it was CNN SI, right? It was big. So she left after a year, and they go, we're going through tapes here, and we pulled yours out. Want you to come in for an interview. I said, great, awesome. And he goes, and do me a favor. Don't send us any more freaking tapes. We got the trilogy here with you. We got like 10 tapes in here. Don't send us any more crap. We got it. We got you. I said, all right. So I was like, all right, no more tapes. Just make sure I wear something nice. So I go in there, and dude, I'm telling you right now, and again, I hope he understands this is the biggest compliment. I love him to death. It was probably the most comfortable I've ever felt in an interview because he's just like, Calderone, get it here. It's Bruner, how you doing? Sit down. So we get ready to sit down. And before he even says anything to me, behind me is a rack of TV monitors, right? You've been doing a TV station, right? Every station in the market is keeping an eye on what everybody else is doing, right? So he sits me down. He's like, so Caldo, oh, wait a minute. What the heck is he? Frickin' George Bush. What the? Anyways, all right, what do you got? I'm like, guy's nuts, and I love every minute of it. And it just took that stress of interviewing for this position. And we had a great back and forth. It was just awesome. We do a tour, we do the whole thing again. Cause, I don't think he knew, to the extent of, I got a tour when I met with Mary Rozak for the news gig. And so he gives me another tour. We meet people, and I'm bumping into people I went to Plattsburgh with. Because there was a bunch of people that graduated from Plattsburgh. They bounced around a little bit, and then they got this gig there. So we're doing the bro shake. What's up? What are you doing? How you been? Are you going to work here? I said, I'm open. I'm interviewing. So we get done with that interview. I leave. 2 weeks later, Chris Bruner calls me. Now he's calling me. Now we're boys, right? Calderone, CB here. What's going on? I said, hey, what's up, Bruner? He goes, you want to be a part of the team or what? And dude, I'm like, wait, what? Now, mind you, this was, and again, I remember this vividly because it was, first of all, one of the most gorgeous October days ever. And it was the Yankees-Red Sox ALCS Game 3 where Pedro Martinez grabs Zimmerman by the face and fires him into the ground, right? So yes. I'm at my apartment. We played football during the day, right? And then we go back to my apartment. We're having some pops. We're having a good time. And he calls me then. And I'm trying to tell people, like, shut up, dude, shut up. Like, it's not like I had a cell phone then. I'm like, ground, we're lying here. I'm like, shut up, dude. So I'm going into the bathroom with this cord, shutting the door. And he's like, we absolutely love you. If you want, the job is yours. And I'm just like, frozen, like couldn't. He's like, you all right? You there? And I'm like, absolutely, man. I'm like, let's do it. Let's do it. So mind you, I'm good to go, right? Good to go. I'm fired up. I tell everybody, my brothers are there. I tell everybody, I'm like, I just got the number 3 at Capital News 9.
This is your moment, your hometown market, the job you've won. You thought there'd never be a chance to get it. It just happened. They just did it to you.
Now, mind you, at that time, it was more of the producing and shooting, but with opportunities to do packages, fill in on the holidays, all that stuff. So later that night, I'm going to Applebee's, right? Because we got to celebrate.
Of course.
At Applebee's. And, dude, this is going to sound so ridiculously cheese. I just start bawling. Just bawling. With the excitement of all that. Now, mind you, I'm balling to be the number 3 for $29.5. Right? Right. I made it. Made it. And that was a 2-year contract. So I was just overwhelmed with emotion, like the excitement of it. And then again, I wasn't even close to being anywhere. I'm not anywhere where I want to be now. And I'm 47. So mind you, this is 20 years ago. And I finally thinking about, like, you get reflective. Like, you're thinking, I'm hustling around here. I'm doing 52 part-time jobs. I'm sleeping on the Florida AM station in Amsterdam. I'm doing traffic. Dude, when I was doing traffic for Metro Networks was right next to ABC Sports and Fitness, right? So it was right in that plaza there. My dad would let me borrow his Caravan that he had, this Dodge Caravan. I would sleep in the van, in the parking lot. I ended up getting like a membership to ABC Sports and Fitness because I didn't want to go there for 4:30 in the morning and get done at 9 and drive back to Broad Albany, because I also, while I was doing the part-time stuff there, probably 4 days a week, I would do the afternoon drive traffic for Metro. So I convinced my dad. I said, hey, and I would sleep in the van and then shower at ABC Sports and Fitness. So
insanity. That's how bad you wanted it, though.
Yeah. And so at that moment, you're thinking, I just made it. I'm the number 3 at this hometown station. People are going to finally see me, whatever. So from there,
you know what? I got to stop you right here, though, because like how this story has gone, for those who have not known about you, for those who are listening outside of the capital region, they just heard this and they're like, what a wild story. The guy's working at a pizza shop in the capital region, hoping to get on the air just one time. And a 6 a.m. call has led him to his dream job in his home market. He's balling at an Applebee's. It actually happened. Now, I thought we were going to do this, and I think I have to. Yeah. I got to make this a 2-part episode, because what's about to happen in your career, from the highs to the lows, and this is now season 2 of Getting There with Goz, I'm not quite sure. It didn't specifically in the capital region in upstate New York market, if there's anybody who I can compare what's about to happen to in media over the next 10 years, like Joe Calderone. So I feel like that's a great tease, both radio and television. So I'm going to go to part 2. I'm going to let you get some water, chill a little bit, because we got a lot more stories coming up. So are you ready for part 2? Can you get some more time with me tonight to do this?
What kind of a question is that?
Yes. All right, part 2, Joe Calderone, on the way next year on Getting There with Goz.